Hello, hello. Welcome to the first episode of Divination Detectives. I am G, Goran or Gogo, and my wonderful, wonderful co-host is here as well.
I'm Alexandra, and I'm also known for my tarot business, which is Guiding Tarot. So we're really excited to do this collaboration for something, fun to do and to maybe solve a few mysteries.
That would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
so
That would be
yeah.
wonderful. Well, we do want to preface this by saying that this is for entertainment purposes only, that we do not, praise ourselves on, anything particular as far as like we're not, actual trained detectives. We are psychics and spiritual people who just, love to share information, love to talk about different things. And this is our way of hopefully trying to present a different side or a more of a clarification to an already existing story. And again, we're just figuring it out. So a lot of different things in the works, in the plans. But for today, we have a really, really big mystery that has enamored, I guess, in many different ways, a huge population of people a couple of years back. So I guess without any further ado, let's just jump in and see what we have in regards to the first story. So let me find this real quick because my laptop closed everything off. So we should also mention that both of us are professional tarot readers. Alex is also a Reiki practitioner and a very, very amazing astrologer, which she did not mention previously, but I can attest to her to her gifts and her credibility. She's really, really wonderful and amazing. And I myself am
Oh, thank you.
I know I I'm gonna I'm gonna give praise where praise is due. Um and I myself am a tarot reader and I guess depending on the situation, a little bit of a channeler because you never know what comes through. And whoever wants to talk to you or to the ones that, are present in the room. So let's see. This laptop is really, really slow today, messing with me. I had everything prepared and then it just wants to mess with me. There we go. Okay. I guess let's jump in. First off, with the disclaimer, the following presentation has graphic descriptions of death, bodily mutilation, and bodily harm. Viewer discretion is advised. So, starting off with this story, I will actually minimize this so I can still see you real quick. There we go. And jump back in. So, a lot of unanswered questions were brought up when the 22-year-old Lisanne Froon and 21-year-old Kremers went missing and were eventually found dead while hiking in the El Pianista Trail in Panama. Last seen on April 1st, 2014, after they had been sent away from a volunteering gig they arranged before the trips began. On April 2nd, a tour guide went looking for the pair, and after they had not shown up to the agreed spot to tour a nearby farm. April 3rd, the word had spread about the woman missing through the area, and a search party had slowly began to form. Uh, the search actually began at the Spanish school where the pair had supposedly needed to be volunteering that day and had not showed up. The school did show records on the computers that they had searched up the El Pianista Trail to walk, and they were presumed to have gone on the trail. The trail in question is considered to be a pretty straightforward, though the area is heavily forested and full of thick vegetation. There is a single trail that leads to the mountaintop from the most accounts and back down from it, and approximately takes 5 to 6 hours to complete the actual trip. From witness accounts, the pair started on the trail around 3:30 p.m. after being advised that they would not make it back before dark. After A thorough search of the mountain and the surrounding areas, nothing was found. Multiple theories started to develop, from gang-related murder to them getting injured or encountering natural predators. The main theory remains that Lisanne and Kris have been unprepared for the hike, lost track of the trail, and succumbed to the natural elements. So you follow this track. So the timeline continues on June 11th, 2014, 10 weeks after Kris and Lisanne went missing first. A backpack belonging to the missing pair was found on the river. The backpack contained both phones, sunglasses, some cash, and a camera. Camera roll showed that they started the hike at around 11 a.m., negating witness reports, and reaching the summit at 1 p.m., also from photo records. Photos showed that they had continued their hike in the opposite direction of Boquete. No pictures were taken for another 8 days, and then there was a series of about 90 pictures or so of just pure darkness, and then one of someone's head, back of a head, which is actually assumed to be Kris, which that is because the photo actually showed a blonde kind of a chunk of hair. Okay, so on June 18th, there is a woman's foot found with the foot and boot found with the boot with the foot inside of it still, kind of a decomposing by the side of the river. And on the opposite side of the bank, remains of a pelvis bone were found. On the 1st of April, two cell phone calls were made. So this is where things kind of start to get a bit more weird, because we have kind of this timeline of, they kind of went in there, got lost, and, they just didn't know how to come back, or, got lost in the woods. So where things start to get a bit eerie and creepy is when the phone records were uncovered after they have been found in the backpack. Okay, so here's the kind of a timeline of the phone calls. On the 1st of April, two phone calls were made towards 112 by both girls, after which point both phones had been shut off. So 112 is actually a European emergency number. Okay, so similar to 911 in America. April 2nd, both phones are powered up and emergency calls are made to both 911 and 112. Battery went flat on Lisanne's phone on April 4th, while Kris made one last call on the 3rd. After that, the phone was turned on and off over the next couple of days, but no calls were made. On April 6th, the phone was turned on and off a couple more times, but the wrong PIN code was entered. April 11th, the phone was turned on and off one final time. No PIN code trying to be entered, no other attempts at calls, nothing. And then the final part is in August, several more bones belonging to the girls were found further downstream. And eventually the rescue attempts, or, further investigations completely stopped, because it was presumed that due to natural, environmental things like rain and water levels and stuff like that rising in the river, it would be very unimaginable to be finding any other missing parts, bones, or anything else left over from the girls. So that's a quick, short synopsis of, again, what transpired between the pair.
Yeah, so it's really interesting too, because you have to think of Panama, right? Because it is in Central America. This is literally like heavy, heavy jungle, very, very mountainous. And I do have personal experience having visited Costa Rica twice, which neighbors Panama. So when I was looking at the map, the area that I have actually been to and visited and experienced is not that far really when you look at the place where they entered the trail and disappeared. Now, I know that, and like we were saying about not able to find the bones because of weather, like the rainy season usually begins at the beginning of May. And, any kind of waterways that are just little streams might be like huge flowing rivers during this time because it is literally a rainforest, right?
Yes.
And the amount of, not just vegetation in the forest, but wildlife, including creatures in the water, creatures near the water, mammals, insects, reptiles, like, poisonous frogs, venomous snakes, aggressive any other animal, monkeys, anything. Like there is so many possibilities when you're just looking at just the terrain itself and just the natural world around them, not even considering, people being involved. So for them to even, survive, like if they did get lost and had to survive a few nights, like it would be very difficult, I think, to do so just alone with no supplies, right? Because they would have only been prepared for several hours, not anything past that.
Nope.
So yeah, just to kind of give a context of, where the location is, it would be extremely difficult, even if you were a trained guide, really, to survive in that situation if something did go wrong.
So
So I
also
can I can
another,
definitely attest to that.
yes, another weird fact with all of this is that the last records show them using the phones around the 6th, right? Third
Mm-hmm.
to the 6th, but the camera roll also was way past that point, like 8 days after or something. But considering the
Mm-hmm.
fact that first kind of a search parties for the two of them started like 2 days from them missing or 3 days. So they would have
Mm-hmm.
still been alive, wandering the wilderness, presumably. I think we have to use presumably because, nothing is defined, presumably, and also evading search parties.
Mm. Yeah, it's very strange. However, if you think about the jungle, when you're in there, it's not a quiet place. Like
True.
it's just constantly buzzing, constantly loud, like, with the animals, the insects, all the trees moving around, the birds, like if you were, I would say at a lower elevation than the search party, you probably couldn't hear them and vice versa.
That's true.
But yeah, it's hard to say, right? Like we will dive in to try to see what what our hypothesis is or theories, but it would be, not easy like, a Canadian forest in the winter with no sounds, like you can hear forever. This is like a real live, thick jungle. So
Yeah.
it would be difficult even to search for someone, I would say.
That's true. And I'm also just considering the fact that approximately like 90 shots or so were taken from
Mm-hmm.
the camera on a single night that it was turned on. And it kind of more or less shows the same location. There is no movement indicated because they did, play with the photos and try to lower and heighten the exposure to try and make out, what they were actually taking photographs of. Because some of them were actually just of night sky, and a lot of them were just like rocks or what you could make out to be trees, but it looks to be like this almost the same picture over and over again. And one of them actually looks to be like from as if you were laying down or squatting down from the ground up. So what got me thinking now, as you're explaining the animals and everything else, what, because some theory said that they might have tried to use the flashlight, right, to get people to notice the flashing so somebody would notice where they are. What if they were actually using that to try and scare off wildlife, like using the flashlight, like a
Yeah,
jaguar
or
or
even just
something?
to try to hmm or even just to try to see what was there,
Yes,
right?
but that kind of goes against the fact that it's like about 90 pictures and kind of at the same location, not really
Okay.
moving anywhere. So I don't know. That was mentioned, but is that possible then if you're just taking a photo of the same place and just trying to flashlight the same thing?
Hmm.
Kind of makes more sense if you're like
Yeah.
put in a corner, to me personally, sorry, to then try and kind of defend yourself with if you have nothing else like the flashlight trying to scare something off.
Yes, that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Okay, I guess we're gonna shuffle some cards. Shuffle some cards with
Yeah, let's like we can only guess, right? So like the
of
whole
course.
point of our podcast and the style that we're going to do is we are going to ask spirit for help to kind of decipher some of these clues, some of these facts and theories, and just try to get a sense of the energy of how they were feeling, what their physical situation was, and then hopefully too, like what actually happened to them. So I did want to say that, Goran and I, like, we have great respect for the dead in this situation. And we are coming into this with kindness and love and compassion for them. And we would just ask if spirit of Kris and Lisanne could even be present and help us to decipher some of these cards and try to channel some of the energy in hopes to, yeah, find more clarity around their situation and just to show them that we do care. And hopefully soon, other stuff comes out and more of it will be solved and put to bed for their family. But in general, yeah, just want to say that.
Yes.
So if there's yeah, if spirit could step forward, we would really appreciate that. And yeah, I think we should just kind of hop in. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah, of course.
All right.
What should we look into first?
Um, I would say like let's try to tap into the energy of when something first went wrong.
Okay.
Like, what was the first feeling of them feeling like, oh no, this isn't good? And
Hmm.
try to pinpoint the environment that that happened, and then just the general feeling of each girl physically and mentally, I would say.
Okay.
So it was really interesting too. Like when I was looking up the information, I found a website that does trail reviews, and it's a
Okay.
very popular like worldwide app. And just recently, like a year or two ago, someone had posted that there were wild dogs on the trail and that like hikers were actually like getting scared off the trail or turning back. And some of them were even getting like bitten by these dogs. So that was kind of interesting because that could be one of the theories that they were like chased off the trail, right?
Hmm.
But let's see here.
That's true. Okay. Well, that's interesting. So actually, the cards that for me come up as far as the first instance, something going wrong, I have the king here.
Oh,
To me, that would be indicative of another person being present.
wow.
And with Kris, her energy, I actually have the devil, which, knowing from, traditional imagery, devil is actually showing a lot of like bondage and being, what's the word that I'm trying to find? Um, Restrained in some sort of way.
Oh, wow. Okay. So for Kris, you said?
Yes, because for Kris and the chariot in reverse, kind of feels like the path being obstructed or something that is sort of crossing the path that's not allowing her to go further.
Okay.
Because with Lisanne, I get a state of like slight panic and concern, but sort of like trying to be the mediator, trying to calm things down a little bit. Because we have Temperance, we have the Nine of Swords in reverse. The only one that's kind of out of balance is the Two of Pentacles in reverse, being like, I don't know how to feel about all of this, and sort of feeling slightly panicky, but also trying to keep everything, cool down and under control. Whereas the devil and then the chariot in reverse is like with Kris more so kind of that state of like something is blocking my path, I can't go any further, or something is preventing me. So some sort of injury or something, but also considering the Six of Cups in reverse and the King of Swords in reverse, potentially a person. The only one that's like kind of confusing to me is the Six of Cups in reverse.
It's interesting. So for Kris, I got the Six of Wands reversed,
Okay.
and I got the Two of Swords reversed. And then I also got this card from my Energy Oracle deck, and it says strategy, and that was reversed. So when I'm tapping into that strategy, it's kind of like what you were saying, like a stall in progress due to lack of planning. You have a goal in mind, but no specific ideas on how to achieve it. So it's like they're trying to figure out a strategy, but they can't. But the Two of Swords, like that blindfold and being kind of tied up, is very interesting to me.
Exactly.
And the Six of Rods, too, makes me feel like maybe there was like a small victory for them. Like they made a choice of like what to do, but then like the end result wasn't what they expected. But yeah, it feels like with Lisanne, I got this Page of Cups reverse. So like that emotional, like she's, like that freaking out energy of like
Mm-hmm.
really not knowing where to place her emotions, what to do. Um, and that came out with this contract reverse. So I wonder, like you were saying, like if one of them had to leave the other one, or one of them had to, or maybe one of them decided to like, oh, you're hurt, like let me go explore, or something like that contract, like they're breaking away from each other. It almost feels like that. But I'm gonna pull some more.
Yes. I'm trying to just determine, I'm asking like whether one of them got injured. And it
Hmm.
actually, for the first day, like that would be when they first went missing, like when first something first went wrong, it actually showed no. Now I'm
Okay.
asking whether or not somebody was on the trail with them or they encountered somebody and actually got a maybe with the pendulum.
Okay. So
So
let's clarify on that. Like, was it a person or an animal?
let's see. Maybe in the person. Let's see if we get a yes or a no directly for an animal. Okay. So this is a yes for an animal.
Okay. Because I got unlikely for a person. Okay. And then I asked like if it was because of an injury, and it said no. So yeah, it's leaning towards animal.
Yep.
Now, when we go back to those dogs, I
Yes.
actually before we started, I pulled this card. It's a gray wolf card. It's got three dogs on it.
Mm, there we go. It makes sense with like
So
a
and it makes sense with that Six of Rods reverse about like choosing to escape them, right? Maybe
yes.
they chose to run away and thought that was the best idea at the time, but then they could have got lost or they could have got injured then. But yeah, let's dive a little deeper. So
That's what I was
it's
just gonna
lean,
say is
yeah.
like that sort of sense of like trying to I asked whether or not they were trying to rush to try and hide from whatever they noticed as the threat, which in this scenario kind of
Mm-hmm.
seems to be like an animal based off of everything. and sort of getting lost in the process of trying to evade whatever it is that they encountered or was pursuing them.
The other thing too that I had read about it is they were boarding with a local family while they did their volunteer work,
Yes.
and they had brought the family's dog with them. And then the dog came home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was that night or the next day.
That night,
So
actually. That night.
that night, okay.
Yeah.
So that's another reason for the dog to separate from them, is if like it was, came across a set of other animals or another animal that was like a bigger predator. It could have scared the dog away. Maybe they could
Because
have
you have,
even been looking for this dog.
yeah, because you have like things like jaguars in there, and I think a jaguar would make a nice meal
Hmm.
out of a little doggy, you know,
Definitely. Yeah.
size wise. Even like a German Shepherd or whatever would still, I think, be no real competition for a jaguar. Hmm. Okay. Let's actually see whether it was like a stray dog or just a wild animal. Let's try and pinpoint that.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. So I use this other deck, and it's another dog card. Wolves on it. There's two wolves on this card.
Okay. I mean, this is again pointing towards wild animal, which I get kind of in essence like a stray dog that's just left out in the wilderness, roaming around.
They will, yeah, and they will form packs too, like that trail app that I was looking at was saying, like, don't go on this trail. There are what like they're wild dogs, but this is like 9 years after. Was when they left the review, 9 years after the girl's disappearance. But definitely still could be very relevant, right? Like there could just
Yes,
be, it's outside of a town, not far from the town. So like if somebody did have stray animals, they could, yeah, definitely go out in the wild and just survive in a pack.
exactly. Because I mean, it's rich in
Wow.
life in general, so they could be like hunting different things to survive, or
Yeah.
even scavenge around the town,
Yeah.
realistically, because
Exactly.
they're kind of a close enough to where they can disappear into the jungle, but come out and scavenge the trash or whatever to
And they were obviously not afraid to be aggressive towards hikers.
exactly.
And I bet you that one little dog must have, yeah, just not felt safe. If it was like a pack of other animals or even just one larger animal, there's not much protection from that dog because he's tame.
Exactly.
Hmm.
I guess let's look into what happened after they first kind of really got lost.
Okay. Yeah,
Because
because it sounds like and it feels like Kris made the decision to take a direction or to go somewheres to get away from this threat, is how it feels with that Two of Swords reverse, because it's like you're
instinctual.
when the two gets reversed, the decision's then made to do something. um okay, so let's see after they got.
And I see sort of Lisanne being more of a, I guess, yes, panicky, but also trying to
Mhm.
be like the voice of reason in some sense, like trying to be the grounded one, but also just like being very panicky inside, which,
Yeah.
being faced with, something that you can't really defend yourself against, considering they had no like proper gear, think they were like in shorts and tank tops, right? That they
Hmm.
went on this hike, no real protective gear from anything besides boots.
And then drinking water, that would be a problem because you would run out of drinking water and you'd have only the water from the river or the stream, which is not going to be like that could have caused internal problems for them if they had to
Exactly.
drink that water. And I can just imagine the insect bites and
Oh,
the the flies and the mosquitoes and the ants and the poisonous frogs, like all those little things just kind of, continually like attacking you. Um, so I asked about like the environment after they get off the trail, and I got this page of wands. Look at how creepy that is. There's all these sticks in the bottom
oh yeah.
of the card, and there's this little eyeball sticking out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's making me feel like they really got in the thick of it. Like I think they got, yeah, into a place where it was so thick that, yeah, they weren't able to see back where the trail could be. They probably got very disoriented, even just after, so many hours without drinking water. Um, yeah, it feels like they got stuck in the wilderness, like in the greenery. Um,
I
let me
agree.
see about you agree? Yeah.
I agree. I agree because I got the star and I got the ace of wands as to like what was the events after they sort of ran off basically and tried to hide or evade. And the star kind of points towards the fact that by the time that they kind of stopped or really got a chance to think and consider what was happening and really just kind of settle down a little bit, it was already most likely nightfall by that point, and sort of
Yeah.
being lost in like the thick of it and not being able to see properly to differentiate like what was going on and what was happening.
Oh, wow. And then I just pulled a card for mental state, and I got the Page of Cups reversed again.
Okay.
So even just getting these pages, you have to remember like these girls were only 21 and 22, so very immature, very like they're going from the Netherlands to Panama, like they're very inexperienced in that different environment. And they probably, I'm not saying, they didn't do their research and all of that, but like I said, when you plan for like a trip of several hours, you just you don't really think of anything past that. So I'm feeling like they felt very unprepared, and didn't have a lot of survival gear on them, and just really in over their heads. Um, this card actually does have water, and it's the little animal, the capybara, is swimming in the water. So it makes me feel like they probably went near the water. Like I said, they probably got thirsty and
Mm-hmm.
found water and maybe hung out near there. Um, if you hear little goo goo gagas, I got my little baby here. He's
That's
part
the
of this.
jungle noises.
Yeah, the jungle noise. um, oh yeah, and I'm just kind of like when I'm tapping in here, just I do feel like the franticness
Mm-hmm.
and just those Page of Cups reverse, like really not having any answers for themselves,
Nope.
but doing the best they can. Um, but when you look at the evidence too about only finding a few bones, it makes sense. So if they did end up perishing near water, and then a few weeks go by and the rainy season starts, they're going to be washed away. Fish in the water are going to be, eating their flesh, not necessarily, making scratches and stuff on the bones, because that's what people were like saying. Oh, it can't be wild animals because the bones are clean. There's no teeth marks. There's no this. But there's so many other creatures than just like a large mammal chewing on a bone. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
there's like, a pack of ants could have cleaned that bone clean. There's so many different things. Um, Yeah, but it does feel like they definitely, I would say, got very disoriented after just a couple of days, is what I'm kind of picking up.
Mm, what I was getting is very similar because I asked like whether they were close to water, and this seems to be like a yes, which is supporting what you're
Hmm.
getting as well, which is like day one or day two, like being by the water, trying to sort of find refuge. I think once they had a little bit of a think about what was going on, they were thinking that they could follow the river to somewhere to go follow the
Mm,
river bank and find their way out of it, considering, it's possible that it leads them back into civilization or at least to somebody or a village or whatever that would be close to the river, which is Morgan Le Fay right here. I am heavily associated with like potions and water and trying to, kind of find medicine by the water. So kind of a thinking of water. The initial kind of a feelings, I I agree with you, which is, panic and chaos and just confusion as to what's going on. We have Chamara, Web of Life, just feeling overwhelmed, like the jungle at night. I think with all of the noise that you would have throughout the day, with like the birds, the monkeys, everything, the forest and wind in itself, but then triple that at night when it's dark and creepy, you can't see a, a finger in front of your face, and everything is making
no.
noise, and it's so much more creepier and so much more scarier. So I think that that first night or two were definitely far more intense than the rest, based off of this, because it was just so much of that kind of a survival instinct kicking in and trying to figure out what to do. I did ask whether or not there were injuries on the first or the second night, and actually it shows no. And I sense that I'm getting is like them trying to go back to elevation. So the river would be, at a lower altitude. So them trying to reach higher altitudes to try and orient themselves back towards civilization and trying to orient themselves back towards, humanity and finding safety. And injuries actually occurring that way. So from falling or
Okay.
from getting injured by trying to climb, considering the fact that a
Hmm.
lot of the riverbanks are described to actually be having like quite steep rock falls and waterfalls and just in general be quite rocky, makes sense that even climbing out of
Hmm.
that would be quite risky and potentially, bring injuries. Though it seems like they would have not happened by the river.
Yeah. It's interesting too. Like I reshuffled my deck and I got that strategy card again reversed for Lisanne's energy,
Mm-hmm.
because I asked about like when they perished kind of thing. And for Kris, this one's a little strange. I'm gonna try to interpret it, but door to value. So I feel like they felt like there was a valuable reason to keep moving instead of staying put,
Yes.
but the strategy was weak because I don't think there was anything about them having like physical maps on them. I think maybe they were like relying on their phone,
Mm-hmm.
um, or just doing the research beforehand and feeling confident that they were just going to stay on the trail and really not thinking about or preparing for any other scenario besides being on the trail. So they're like what you kind of said about like them kind of making a last ditch effort kind of to get to safety makes a lot of sense with these cards. Like they saw the value in giving it a try, but their strategy, their plan didn't have any good safety or support to it because they had no tools to do that. And if you can think about just being out there for a few days or for the timeline, by the end of it, like what kind of energy would they even have to climb a mountain? you know, it's
Exactly.
it's it's not going to be there. But I want to ask about the photos that they took. Like what was going on? when they took those? Because it sounds like they were all kind of consecutive. And yeah, it could have been them sending a signal or just trying to light things up or scare off an animal. I'd like to kind of see what that was about.
Do you remember there was a pod actually explaining the discovery of their bones, right? And
Hmm.
there was a point where they said that that Chris Chris's and Lisanne's bones were at different stages of decomposing.
Okay.
So if I'm not mistaken, I think it said that Chris was the one that the bones were more decomposed. Because I asked
Okay.
whether or not, what was happening right before, each of the girls kind of passed away. And I kind of get a sense that they did not die at the same time.
Yeah, I feel that too.
They did not die at the same time.
Yeah, which would make sense. Um, yeah, when I pulled on the pictures, I got this card again. It's crazy. I'm getting these repeat cards because I'm
Oh yeah.
literally, I'm shuffling. I'm shuffling. And I also got this Four of Swords, like they're hunkered down, but they're like that. I think they saw something or heard something in the woods and
What
they
did
were
I
trying to
say?
see what it was.
What did I
Yeah, it's
say?
exactly how I feel with these. Yeah.
Let me
And
actually try and pull a card on that to see what happens when I pull a card on that on the photos.
yeah, but I don't feel like an animal killed them. I feel like they ran out of food and like their dehydration and maybe one of them kind of just, went to sleep and didn't get up again or and then the other one had to leave. That's how I feel.
Because the
But
photos were
it's
taken
it's really
about
amazing.
8 days
Hmm.
after, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Let
And you
me
know
just
what?
check.
If one of them and the way that they were turning on and off the phone, like they were just checking to see if they could get signal, right? Is how it kind of presents.
Yeah.
And but the wrong pin could have been like, one of the girls having the other girl's phone. And maybe she had perished or she had to leave her for a minute and she wasn't able to get in her phone, but she could still turn it on and see if there were any signal bars, you
So
know?
from the phone records, that kind of a makes sense, but it also okay. So what I'm getting here in regards to like moments before death is what I pulled the cards on.
Okay.
So phone records show that it was Lisanne's phone that went out first on April 4th.
Okay.
Like that was one last call and then was turned on and off a couple of days after, but no more phone calls were made from her phone. The last use on um, Chris's phone was April 11th, and it was shut off one last time with battery left and never
Hmm.
turned on again. But no calls were made and no pin was trying to be put in. So it was Chris's phone that had the wrong pin number trying to be typed in.
Okay.
Now, from what I'm getting, it kind of looks like Lisanne would be the first one to go because with Chris, the card that actually came through, we have the 10 of Wands. Now, does that not look to you like somebody trying to carry, sorry,
Hmm.
somebody with them? Like, what if Lisanne
Yes.
died first and Chris was like, I'm gonna still try to find somebody and not leave my friend here and take them with
Hmm.
me? Because moments before death for Lisanne, we actually have the three of Pentacles. So like being in company, being surrounded with people. We also have
Yeah.
the tower, which kind of makes sense with like falling, like getting injured and uh potentially, succumbing to the injuries of a fall or succumbing to the injuries of um
Malnutrition,
malnutrition,
dehydration.
yeah, on top of maybe like a fall, or and it's just, too much. Whilst Chris's other card is Six of Swords in reverse, like no longer being able to move, no longer being able to go ahead.
Yeah.
So kind of feel like Lisanne would be the first one to go due to, the elements and everything else. And then Kris was probably like besides herself, just trying to figure out what to do next, and possibly also trying to carry her friend with her for a period of time. But seeing how she's like kind of the sense of like I died alone, she probably left her behind at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Or hunkered down by her body and died of exposure, natural elements, and just malnutrition, and no longer having a source of clean water for one, right, as you said yourself, or having any food or anything else to go off of.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm just trying to see what else is here.
Let me try and confirm with the pendulum.
Yeah, so I got for Lisanne this cornucopia reverse, which is like about personal frustration about like, and look at all the food in the picture. It's like she wasn't able to eat, or maybe like I said, like if you did eat something or drank that water, you would be in like, have cramps and pain, and it could just go right through you. So it kind of reminds me of, yeah, like the food in the picture is kind of like what their problem was, is not having food.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so I don't feel like it was like, they fell and bled out. It feels more like internal struggle with their body because of the situation.
Yep, exactly.
And then I got that contract card again, and that was for Kris. So it's like she chose to stay with her. She chose to not leave her.
Yeah,
Um, and it's funny, the numbers, it's like another six too. Like number six isn't really a action number. It's more of a just being number.
yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of get a
Oh,
sense.
it's so sad.
The pendulum is showing that when I asked whether or not she tried to take her body elsewhere, it actually shows no. So maybe she was just
Mm-hmm.
trying to preserve her body, like from getting eaten or further like destroyed by wild animals or something. She might have moved it somewhere, just to be able to kind of keep her body at least safe, so it's not vandalized by wildlife or something else. I'm trying to pinpoint whether or not they were in some sort of a cave, because what I keep going back to since I started reading this and everything, I kind of keep getting like maybe they went into like a cave or a small like indent somewhere for sort of protection, very similar to the hedgehog that you have gotten in your cards previously, that shows sort of like this little creature hidden away somewhere trying to protect itself. So let's see about that. Yeah, that to me is a yes. Kind of seems like they would be somewhere close to the river, remaining close to the river, is kind of unable to move forward, or feeling like they need to stay put, as sort of believing that there would be a search party that would come find them, but also due to the surrounding noise that Alex mentioned previously, like not being able to hear when there was a search party going after them. It just feels like a you have your mic off, actually.
Sorry, my dog was barking. Yeah, and then the area that they chose, I feel like that probably flooded after the fact, because I asked about like what happened to their bodies after. And I got like this root chakra card with this temple.
Mhm.
So it's like they chose a place, a direction, a place to be that felt safe for them, that felt secure. Um, but yeah, I feel like their bodies kind of would have just remained there and then got flooded out afterwards or got washed
Yeah,
away afterwards.
yeah. The pendulum also
Um,
says yes on that.
okay. Because I think too, like the some of the stuff that they had with them, I think there was a couple of the pictures showed them like, like hanging up their wet clothes on a branch. And then they must have like even they could have abandoned their book bag at their knapsack, right? At some point because it would have been another, if they're very weak, they wouldn't be able to carry it. Or they did have it with them and it got washed away after the fact too. But it makes me feel like everything kind of got, yeah, like separated in the water. And then, yeah, if you have a body floating down the river in the rainy season, the animals are going to get that eventually. And that's, I think, why they only found certain pieces.
Yeah.
It would be almost impossible with those raging waters to A, keep the body together and B, like know where it's going to come out at the end, if it even does.
Even considering, okay, this might be, a little bit, we don't want to get too graphic, but we did give a disclaimer in the beginning. Because I did just ask,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about, big predators and not necessarily it needing to be a big predator that was involved in all of this. I did just ask, whether there was like a jaguar or like a bigger cat involved, because there is like 3 or 4 species of wild cats out there. um I got a yes on that. And considering that, you
Mm-hmm.
could also consider the fact that, if I'm not mistaken, in my biology and National Geographic research, um jaguars do tend to take their food up trees.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
could, parts of them just be scattered somewhere in the forest? Possibly.
Oh,
Yes.
wow. So look at this card that I just pulled. It's a Queen of Swords card, but it's showing the treetops. Look at that. Just as you were talking about that,
Jesus. Okay. Yeah.
treetops.
Ooh,
Wow, that gave me the shivers.
me too. This is, I'm
This is,
so sorry for the two of them, because this is like the most horrendous way to
mhm.
go.
And their poor families, right? Like they would have
Yes.
traveled from the Netherlands to come and search for them, and then you have no pieces or body parts to put to rest. It's very unsettling for the family.
Yeah, just I think it was just a
Um,
couple of bones that were basically laid to rest in essence. And that would
mhm,
also make sense if they hunkered together, like, I know in the beginning you said like maybe one left the other. Makes sense if they would like go out and trying to scavenge for like food or
mhm,
something that would get them through. Because considering the fact that they have lived for several days, like they disappeared on the first, we still have like on the 11th traces of them trying to use their phones or using the camera. So this is like 10 days after. They would have to survive off of something. Now, considering, as you said, like potentially eating something or drinking water that, was not too clean, or surviving off of food that either wouldn't be cooked or processed in any sort of way, possibly even eating something, because that was another one. I actually did want to check into that. Whether
mhm.
they ate something that could have potentially been hallucinogenic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a yes as well. So
Okay. It
being
could have
out
eaten
there,
something. Yeah.
lost, and then also tripping your balls off with, you know,
And
ingesting
even
something.
even being dehydrated would make you hallucinate, I would say too,
Yes, I think after like 2 days
right?
or something. 2 or 3 days, you start to
Hmm.
hallucinate.
Yeah. So they probably they would have had to drink the unfiltered water, which would have so much strange bacteria and God knows, right, what's in there. Especially with the rainy season and rain happening, like it's not like it's coming out of a fresh well here. We're dealing with a lot of animals, a lot of waste, just different bacteria than they would their own body would be used to because they come from a different part of the world even. You know, it's it's kind of, yeah, it's very sad because you can feel their struggle. You can feel that they really did have a good, I think, good fight in them to survive for that many days.
Yes.
Um, and it would have been so sad and so full of despair if, your best friend perished first, and just imagine like how you would feel and not knowing what to do or where to go or having the energy to even do anything at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
So I actually looked it up. So it says hallu hyponothermia, which can cause hallucinations or coma, with which some may interpret as catatonia, when dehydration reaches the point of causing hallucinations.
okay.
So yeah, so both, dehydration, infection can lead to delirium or cause hallucination. So that also makes sense if they're also, just hallucinating, even if they didn't ingest
And
anything
hearing
like that.
all and hearing all the jungle noises and at
Oh
night,
my
like
God.
that last night with all the pictures, like just
Which could also
oh
explain like the pictures, like yeah, if they're hallucinating and hearing something, oh my God, I'm just getting the shivers, and like seeing things in the dark that aren't there and just trying to scare it away with like using
yeah.
the camera, because the camera roll doesn't show anything in particular as like something being there or anything particular being shot at. Wow. So
Wow.
that's kind of the conclusion that we're coming to, I guess.
Yeah,
Natural
I would
natural
say like
causes.
I think so. Yeah. And then unfortunately the wilderness kind of taking care of everything after that, you know.
Yep.
Um could be many different animals like having a piece. It could have been like, the water could have took them right to a different area even. Um yeah, it's very sad.
I guess before we conclude with anything, I do have one question. Like, did anybody come across them on the actual trail, right? Or after they were lost? Did anybody like come across them like a human? Because there was a lot of speculation of like gangs and possibly like the natives coming across them or stuff like that, which is kind of a rebuked in a lot of different ways, and people disagree with that. But just so
Mhm.
we have our kind of basis covered.
Yeah, sure. I feel like it's a no. Like, I don't know what you're getting.
You know what? I'm kind of getting a mix between a no and a maybe. And
Okay.
kind of what I'm picking up on is like if they were screaming or trying to get attention, somebody to notice them, kind of feels like somebody might have heard something but didn't go far enough to have actually discovered them while they were still alive.
Oh, that's cool. When you said that, I got this card that said don't stop,
Yeah.
as if like they could have, if they kept going,
Yeah, they would have been discovered.
um, they they would have been discovered. Or yeah, it's like they only went so far. But if they went a little bit further, they would have found more evidence to find them. But
Yes.
like when I was asking about like if anyone like, yeah, was involved in, or what you just said before that, I got the Five of Pentacles. So it was like making me feel like, yeah, they felt left out or they weren't able to reach that person.
Mm-hmm.
but also just feeling like they don't physically have enough of what they need
Yeah.
to survive.
And I feel like they didn't really scatter anything. Like if they had gone
Yeah.
like a perimeter, like maybe a kilometer or something, and just scattered a couple of things, like pieces of clothes or anything out
Mm,
of their backpack, just to indicate that there was somebody there, that could have changed things drastically as well in them being found. You know what?
yeah,
One more
that makes
thing.
sense with this Five of Pentacles too. It's like there wasn't enough evidence left by them for people to
Yes.
find them. That's a good point. I think
Yeah.
that's true.
They didn't carry too much with them either way, but they didn't even leave, any trace of them being there first off.
Hmm. But again, if you're like, if a pack of wild dogs chase you off the trail, that's not really in your mind yet, right? About
Exactly.
leaving things behind. Um, oh, go ahead.
Uh,
Sorry, I feel like I cut you off from your last thought.
No, it's okay. I was just asking whether or not during their stage of being missing, whether they were taken or gone out of the region in any sort of way. And it kind of went between like maybe and no. And I think this just sort of points towards them wandering around, not really knowing where they're going. And this could have been once the kind of a delirium or hallucinations has sort of onset a little bit and not really keeping track of where they're going and just kind of walking aimlessly
Mhm.
and sort of wandered outside of the area and then maybe came back to where they were or just found a different location because it kind of feels like they found a place eventually where they would have hunkered down in the last sort of maybe couple of hours or a couple of days and sort of remained there.
Yeah, yeah, I get that too. I'm tapping into the energy for sure. So how did we want to kind of conclude, I would say?
Yeah, I what is your theory? I guess that's gonna be our conclusion. Like based off of everything that we kind of got today, what
Mhm.
would you say happened? Because again, we have a lot of unanswered things with them making phone calls and being alive during the search parties already going out and trying to find them. And we have numerous people being involved with that. And if they were washed up, their bodies weren't found for a long time, right? The backpack was found
Mm,
after like 10 weeks, after they initially
mhm.
had gone missing. So could have their bodies potentially been dragged underwater and get stuck somewhere and slowly decomposing underwater for a while. So what do you think happened based off of everything?
Yeah, I think they were, yeah, I feel like they were chased off the trail or scared off the trail. I don't think they intentionally wandered off the trail. Um, and then second, I think they lost their bearings, not knowing how to get back to the trail, or they could have, slid down a slope or something that caused them to not physically be able to get back. I do think they went down towards the water, which, if you think of water flow, like you would have to go downhill in those mountains because, you don't just have a river flowing on the side of a mountain. You got to go down. And then I think the loudness of everything, especially if you got water running and, like I said, all the jungle noises, and then your own like delirium, they probably came very close to hearing the search party, but I don't think they could hear it.
Yeah.
Um, and then to the point where we were saying, like, I got that card about the food, and it just made me feel like, they had tried to survive on what they could find, drinking the water. They probably got, really bad, like, internal stomach problems from that. And yeah, I'm sorry, I got mixed up on the names, but you were thinking Kris perished first. Is
I
that what you
actually got the
said?
sense that Lisanne would have
Oh,
perished
Lisanne,
first.
sorry, Lisanne. So yeah, and Lisanne perishing first, and then Kris, I think at that point may have given up or may have didn't made maybe didn't have the energy to move on. But it does feel like they hunkered down together in a spot with the cards that I got, and unfortunately, she would have perished next. I asked for one final message, like from them, and I got the Wheel of Fortune reversed and the Queen of Pentacles reversed.
Mm.
So it just makes me feel like there were a couple with the Queen of Pentacles, or not Pentacles, sorry, Queen of Rods, Queen of Wands. With that, it feels like there may have been a couple of choices where they went against their own instincts. And it didn't work out for them with the Wheel of Fortune reversed. And also with those, Page of Cups reversed, like just not feeling prepared and letting their emotions get the better of them, which just adds to the disorienting of their location. Um, but yeah, it just feels like with the Queen of Rods reversed too, like their fire went out, their energy went out, um, and they weren't able to get it back to get themselves out of the situation. That's kind of how I feel.
Makes perfect sense. Um, I have to agree with pretty much everything. I don't think there is much to add besides just saying that, it is known that they have completed the initial part of the trail and had actually gone over to the other side because there are, pictures, evidence of that. So
Mm-hmm.
the these the situation where they got scared of the trail would likely happen maybe on the other side of the mountain where the trail isn't so familiar or known, and kind of getting lost in there and maybe wandering around the mountain for a bit, not knowing, which way is back to, Boquete makes a lot of
Mm-hmm.
sense. And then just eventually going down to the river, which is like the first or the second night, and hunkering down for a night, and then trying to figure out, because it seems like to me I got that sense of like them possibly trying to go back to elevation but being unsuccessful with like scrapes and bruises, and because there are certain bone fragments that show that they were damaged or broken in some sort of way but were healing. So it makes sense if you get knocked down or you slip and crack something, doesn't necessarily have to be fully broken, and then eventually going down to the river, because it seems like that river was the constant, since they didn't really have
Mm-hmm.
too much luck with elevation. Maybe we didn't ask for that, like did they get like chased after again, or like if they went back to elevation potentially.
The one thing that is kind of standing out to me too, and this kind of attests to this Queen of Rods and not following their instincts, is when you do get lost, you shouldn't be walking, like you shouldn't be moving. You should be trying to hunker down in one spot. And I feel like they were like just choosing to keep moving when
Mm-hmm.
really it would have probably been better for them to just stay put. But they were probably really scared by whatever it was that chased them off the trail as well. Um, and then even just after one night, like, you know, the the panic would have increased tenfold. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, it just makes me, it just like that immaturity, that not being prepared, was really, I think, prevalent in this, because most hikers, when they go out on a hike like this, you always prepare for the extra, like for the worst.
Yes.
Um, like I don't know what it is like around there, but like, places around here in Canada, it's like you bring bear spray with you, or you bring a bell or something to make yourself loud to scare off a bear. So I feel like they just didn't have those extra things. Like they probably had water and a couple snacks, and that was what they brought, because they were just thinking, we're going to go in and out. This is going to be a few hours. They didn't have that pre-planning of if something went wrong, what we have this. So it was definitely like a combination, I think, of poor choices all throughout, um, but also a lot of fear and just unfamiliarity with the area and the animals and insects.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I kind of go with the same, not kind of. I definitely go with the same scenario because it more than likely seems that after a while of just ingesting things from nature, starting to see the effects of that and sort of having more difficulty moving if they did continue to move, which seems kind of the most likely scenario based off of everything,
Hmm.
but already having issues walking and consistently being in movement because of like cramping or just feeling weird and the aches and everything else. um because you consider also that I don't think they had like a change of clothes or stuff like that, or if they did, like that getting soaked. We're talking as well, like you said, like starting like the rain season and stuff like that, so you're
Hmm.
constantly wet. Because I did
You are
ask.
constantly right, like with the like, sorry to cut you off, but when I was in Costa Rica, I think I went right at the beginning of the rainy season, which is like the 1st of May, but a lot of days, even when it's not the rainy season, it always rains because it's like every evening it will rain. So it's like you're definitely dealing with rain in some point, at
Mhm.
some in some capacity of, yeah, feel just being damp, and that would cause issues too, like just for your own body temperature and all
Yeah,
of that. Just really weakened them. They just felt very weak.
yeah, because it also makes sense, because I know when I was reading about the trail, like at the mountain summit, you can see, you know, a lot of your surroundings. So you would also be able to see the city from what I've read. So you would be able to
Okay.
orient yourself once more logically, or at least, logically thinking to find some sort of landmark that would orient you in the right direction, even if you're not familiar with the area necessarily. So I kind of get a feeling that they would have probably tried to gone up again, but were either scared off by the same animals or just noise in general, and then just too weak to kind of continue trying that, and felt like staying put by the river or close to the river was the safest bet. So, but yeah, that I guess that didn't work out necessarily. Yeah,
Poor
I
things.
think that's it. What I have to say on that one.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Dude,
think so too.
dude, we definitely chose a heavy one to start off with.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
This is dark on so
So,
many different levels, because it's just like it's not like a serial killer or like, stuff like that. It's just sheesh, it's like nature just taking you, like
mhm.
claiming you
And
back.
just that feeling of like almost being saved and almost knowing the
Yes.
way. Like there's all these like kind of like
Yes.
close calls is how I feel with the energy. And that's
Mhm.
even more frustrating, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that was pretty good for our first one.
Yeah. So if you're listening
Yeah.
to this, do let us know what you think. Do let us know what you might want to hear from us. If you like what we are doing, if you like the format, if you have any other information in the story that we might have missed out on, or any details that we might have skipped that kind of show, light on what was actually going on. We again, with utmost respect, send our condolences to the families, and want to point out that this is meant to only shed some light in our personal perspectives. It is not meant to, in any sort of way, disrespect either one of the girls or their families or anybody involved, but just a personal passion project for both of us, and trying to, shed light on events that seem mysterious and seem unsolvable, and hopefully just allowing us to share what we get and what we see. So, yeah, I guess you're going to be hearing from us soon with something new.
That's right. So bye for now. Thanks for listening.